So today we're diving into a really fascinating moment in geopolitics. You've got a major international summit, a key player's empty seat, and, well, the diplomatic ripples that it sent across the entire region. Let's get into this story of a missed opportunity for India at a recent ASEAN Summit.
It all really boils down to a simple but pretty powerful question. When you have this gathering of some of the most influential leaders on the planet, all discussing the future of the Indo-Pacific, and one of the most important regional heads of state just isn't there, that gets people talking. And believe me, that's exactly what happened.
And this wasn't just quiet whispers in the hallway either. It was out in the open. This statement right here from Malaysia's Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, really kind of set the tone. He publicly questioned the official reason for the absence, and that tells you that for other leaders in the region, something just wasn't adding up.
Okay, so why is this such a big deal? Why does one empty chair cause such a stir? To really get that, we need to unpack the huge stakes involved and understand just how important the ASEAN platform is for India's strategic goals. See, this isn't some new relationship. It's one that's been carefully built up over decades. India became a dialogue partner way back in '95, and by 2002, they were a full summit-level partner. And these summits, there were big things happen. I mean, the Quad security dialogue was basically reborn on the sidelines of one of these in 2017. With big plans for maritime cooperation coming up, it's clear this is meant to be a long-term strategic thing.
And the reason for that long-term commitment is crystal clear. ASEAN is the absolute cornerstone of India's Act East policy. It's the main stage where India engages with world powers. We're talking to US, China, Russia, on all these critical Indo-Pacific issues. It's vital for maritime security, and it's a massive trade partner. The bottom line is it's a platform India really can't afford to ignore, because in geopolitics, any vacuum you leave behind gets filled by someone else, and fast.
Now, you'll often hear diplomats throw around this term, ASEAN centrality. So what does it actually mean? Well, it's the core idea that these 10 Southeast Asian nations are in the driver's seat when it comes to the region's security and its political direction. Every major power, and that includes India, has vocally and consistently supported this principle. It is, for all intents and purposes, the golden rule of diplomacy in this part of the world.
Right, so with all that context, we get to the central puzzle here, this massive disconnect between what India was saying and what it was actually doing. It really is a tale of two very, very different messages. So on the one hand, you have this incredibly powerful statement from Prime Minister Modi, which he delivered virtually to the summit, calling this the century of India and ASEAN. I mean, that is about as strong a commitment as you can possibly make. It's signaling a shared destiny, a future that is deeply intertwined. And then you have the reality on the ground. For the second year in a row, that seat was empty. The very leader who spoke of a shared century wasn't physically in the room with his counterparts. So this is the thing, right? This disconnect is what raised eyebrows and created this perception gap between the words and the actions. The official reason given was a scheduling conflict because of festivities happening in India. But like the Malaysian PM pointed out, that just didn't seem convincing to a lot of people. So what happens? Speculation fills the void. Was it about domestic election campaigning? Maybe trying to avoid some awkward tensions over a US trade deal? Or perhaps some lingering friction with Malaysia? We don't know for sure, but the ambiguity itself became a huge part of the story. Now, to be fair, India was still very active at the summit. Its delegation made some really significant commitments. They pledged to finalize the big trade deal review, push forward on maritime cooperation, and they reaffirmed their support for both ASEAN centrality and the region's Indo-Pacific outlook. So on paper, it looked like a very productive summit. But here's the thing, and this is really the central argument of the whole analysis. Even with all those strong statements and a very capable delegation on the ground, it just couldn't make up for the leader's absence. In diplomacy, the symbolism of personal presence, of being there in the room, carries a weight that nothing else can replace. And without it, your partners can start to question your commitment. And your rivals, well, they might just see an opening. So, what's the takeaway from all this? What's the lesson learned? Well, the analysis points toward a pretty clear path forward, and it's all centered on this idea of diplomatic currency and credibility. And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Credibility in foreign policy isn't just built on grand statements or deep historical ties. It's built on consistency. It's built on showing up time and time again. That consistent, high-level presence becomes a kind of currency all on its own. It buys you trust, it buys you influence, and it shows an unwavering commitment.
So the path to rebuilding and reinforcing that credibility is actually pretty straightforward. First, you've got to prioritize consistent leadership presence at these key summits. No excuses. Second, you have to align those ambitious statements about a shared century with the very simple action of being in the room. And finally, you use that presence to proactively engage with your partners. It shows you're not just a fair-weather friend, but a reliable, long-term pillar of the region.
And that kind of leaves us with this one final thought. India's external affairs minister described our world as complicated during the summit, and he's not wrong. In a world that is so full of economic turbulence and geopolitical tension, maybe the most powerful, most clarifying diplomatic move isn't some complex strategy, but something much, much simpler. Just being there.